Okay, good morning. Today is Monday. It is the 17th day of Menachem Av. We continue in the long letter, the letter 5 of Igeret Hakodesh from the fourth part of the Tanya. And in today's lesson, the Alter Rebbe goes back to the question that he began this letter with. As you remember, we was talking about, it says, by King David, it says, Vayas David Shem. King David made a name. What name? So the commentators talk about the wars that he was fighting, and there's different interpretations of what names he made when he was fighting the wars. One interpretation is that he was so sensitive and he was victorious, and he eliminated many of his enemies that wanted to destroy the Jewish people. Nevertheless, he was sensitive enough to bury the dead of the enemies. Another interpretation is that he made himself a name as a hero and as a victor, that is being victorious and eliminating so many of his enemies. But the Zohar comes and gives a whole new interpretation. And it says that this verse, that he made himself a name, is connected with what it says after this, that he did tzedakah and chesed. King David he was very kind, and and by being kind, he made a name. Says the Zohar, what does it mean he made a name? He made God's name. He created God's name. So this was a statement that needed explanation. What does it mean, making God's name? And the Zohar and the Alter Rebbe explained in this letter about the way the system Hashem, God creates this world. There is the upper world, the spiritual world, and the physical world. It says the spiritual world, Olam Haba, was created by the Yud. We're talking about this, the name of Hashem, the Yud, the Hey, and the Vav, and the Hey. And they represent the whole system. The way Hashem creates this world is with the Yud represents the Chachma, the wisdom. Everything begins from the wisdom. Then you have understanding. Then you have the emotions. Then you have the building of the project, the Malchus. So this is the four letters name of the Eibishter, the Tetragrammaton, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. And comes the Alter Rebbe and explains like this, that when Hashem created the world, it says, Olam chesed yibana. The world is created with kindness, meaning that in the beginning, for the world to be created, Hashem needed to lower himself with his kindness, and to bring the world into being. And in the beginning, everything was not deserved; it was just given from Hashem, from God. But then Hashem set the system of the world that they should be dependent on our actions. And when we do kindness, when we act in a similar fashion, we draw kindness from above. Because Hashem wanted that this should be deserving. Whatever we get, it should be in a deserving way. And this, the Alter Rebbe goes to explain in today's shir, the fascinating explanation, what it means that when you study Torah, it's not enough. You have to do the kindness. You have to do the act of kindness as well, acting in a similar fashion to Hashem, and thereby creating that name of Hashem, of the name that brings and draws down the kindness from above down below to us. So let's see inside the Tanya. There we go. The Alter Rebbe begins with using an analogy of a chacham, a wise man. Now, for a wise man, in order to share his wisdom, before we go, we're gonna explain this outside, then we're gonna look inside. So, a wise man, before sharing his wisdom, if he wants to share the wisdom to somebody in a lower level, you need to contract his thoughts, the wisdom, to be able to, first of all, to think what you want to deliver to the student. And then how you want to deliver it. And obviously, the wise man, the way when he's with himself, is much in a higher level. In order to relay his wisdom to a person on a lower level, he needs to go down with himself and to reduce it in order to give it to someone else. Sometimes when you're with yourself, you rather not have anybody disturb you. You want to think. You want to have the ability to go deep into your thoughts. So in a similar fashion, says the Alter Rebbe, much, much more so is the way Hashem, God, reduced his wisdom, so to speak, to share this with the creatures. So let's look inside. Says the Alter Rebbe, for example, by the person, the terrestrial man, Mishu Chacham Godei, Lehaskil, Niflois Chachma, when one who is so great a sage as to comprehend the wonders of wisdom, and he contracts the conception and the thoughts into a single letter of his speech. You have to bring it down to one word, one letter. This is a great tzimtzum, a contraction, and a great descent for his wondrous wisdom. Precisely so, by way of analogy, more so, endlessly more so. There was an immensely great and mighty contraction. That when during the 6 days of creation, the heavens were made by the word of Hashem. And all their hosts by the breath of his mouth. As we learned in the previous lessons, that it says that the hay nivra ha'olam hazeh, that the hay was created, this world, and the hay is a very light letter. Is the source of all letters, has the breath. That it says he ois hay shel shem havai baruch hu, meaning by the letter hay, a light letter of the 4-letter names of Hashem. It says in the Torah, it says Behibaram, when he created them, and Behibaram can be read Behei Baraam, that with a hay he created them. Hashem created them all with a hay. And this, the source of all of this, is the Now this letter Hey is the source of the 9 creative utterances which issued from the first utterance, Bereshis. You know what it says in Pirkei Avos, that the world was created by 10 utterances. But when you look into the Torah, you don't find 10 times Hashem says, Vayomer Elokim, and God said. So there's only 9 times. The Gemara says that Bereshis Name Maimaru, that the Bereshis Bereshis, in the beginning, God created, that is also and considered one of the 10 utterances. Says the Alter Rebbe here, not only it's considered one of the 10, but this is the first one, and this is the root and the source of the other 10. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'tzaretz. Says the Alter Rebbe, this is the root of the 9 utterances, shenimshechu mimayma rishon bereshis, that they all were derived and are issued from the first maima, the first utterance, bereshis, in the beginning. The name maima, which itself is a creative utterance. And he, bechinas chachma, this first utterance, the bereshis, refers to chachma, is the level of chachma, the wisdom, and nikras reshis, which is called reshis, the beginning. Because in the chachma, as we explained in the earlier lessons, the chachma includes everything, like a spark of wisdom, the flash that includes the entire thought in one thought. It's like seeing the idea, not just understanding, taking it to details. This is the seeing everything, and then you bring it down to details. So that was the way it was done in the beginning. And as we said earlier, in the beginning, when Hashem created the world, it was a pure, godly kindness coming from above without anything being deserved from the recipient, because there was no recipient. As continues the Alter Rebbe, however, at that time, in the beginning of creation, this downward flow from the Chachma to Malchus, from the wisdom to the lowest level, the Malchus, this occurred without any arousal from below whatsoever. Isarusa de Lesata is an arousal from below. There was no arousal from below to make it, to cause the flow to come. Ki Adam ayin lavid chulu, as it is written in the Torah, for there was no man to work and bring about this arousal. Rak, so how did it come about? Ki chofetz chesed hu. It occurred only solely because he desired to act with kindness. Hashem desired to act with kindness. V'olam chesed ibanim. As it is written, the world is built by kindness. Zeu, says the Alter Rebbe, is another interpretation of the word that we just said. Behi baram, behi baram. He created them with the hay. Says the Alter Rebbe is also has the same letters as Be'avraham, with Avraham. That the world was created with Avraham. Why? Ki chesed le'Avraham, because since kindness is to Avram, Avram was the embodiment of kindness. That's why, as the story goes, when Avraham was, when he had his circumcision, and he was sick, and Hashem made him Hashem made it that there should be, the sun should come out, so there shouldn't be any guest, because he was always serving the guest out of his kindness, feeding them. So when the sun was a very hot day, so nobody was walking around, and Avram couldn't take it. It was too painful for him, because he was the embodiment of kindness. If there was no one to give kindness, Avram went outside and sitting in the sun and waiting to see if anybody comes, because he wanted to share the kindness. He was the embodiment of kindness. So the beginning of creation is connected with the level of Avraham, which is the ultimate kindness. That was in the beginning. But then once Hashem created the world, God decided He wanted that they should be not only with pure kindness from above, but the people should deserve it. That the recipient should deserve it and get something not as a free gift, but as something that they deserve. And that their action should arouse the actions from above. However, after the creation of men to work this world, then, as I call isaruse de le'ele, le'oira midas chesed elyoin, ubi isaruse de le'sata. So every arousal from above to arouse the attribute of the supreme kindness depends on the arousal from below. How do we arouse it? By us doing a similar act of kindness. When we act in kindness, we draw down the kindness from above. Through the acts of charity and kindness that Jews perform in this world. This is why our sages of blessed memory said, that if, and our sages say, whoever says that he is nothing but Torah, I'm just studying Torah, and thus no kindly deeds, does not have even Torah. And he explains why. Rather, one are to engage in Torah and in the performance of acts of loving kindness. For though the Torah derives from Chachma, from the wisdom, and that the world is sustained by virtue of the Torah, and those who discourse in it, when they talk, when they utter the words of Torah. Why? Because by speaking of the Torah, the words of Torah, they elicit illuminations and effusion to bring down the lights from above. Makoira Torah, which is from the wisdom, the supreme wisdom, which is the source of the Torah. And this brings it into the plane of letters of speech, which the world was created by the speech. So when we see and we say, we utter the words, the words of the Torah, we bring down this great wisdom of the Torah into words, which is the source of the creation of the world. We say every morning at the end of davening, we say, Talmidei Chachamim ma'abim sholem ba'ilam, shenemar v'chol b'naich limudei Hashem v'rav sholem b'naich. That the sages bring peace in the world. It says, Rav Sholem b'naich, your sons bring peace. When we say, Al tikra b'naich, ela b'naich, says the Gemara. You don't call b'naich, which means your son, but says b'naich. B'naich means your builders. That means that the Talmidei Chachamim, the sages, when they study Torah, they are building something. They are building the world. By uttering the words of the Torah, bringing the wisdom of Hashem into the words, by this, they bring this into words, into the letters of creation of the world. So, in that case, why do we need tzedakah then? Why is it not enough that if they sit and study Torah, they bring down this into the letters? And so why do we say that anyone who says, I have nothing but Torah, doesn't have even the Torah? So the Alter Rebbe explains that in order for this wisdom to go down and not to remain God's wisdom, meaning a chachma which is his, but it's in order to be drawn down, we need to do a similar act. That the chesed eli and the higher wisdom, to awaken the higher kindness that Hashem should want to come bring down, just like the wise man would rather sit in his own world and meditate, and he needs the kindness to come down and draw down to the person. The same thing is in order to study Torah, you need the acts, along with the studied Torah, you need the acts of kindness, and that arouses the kindness from above to bring down this great wisdom down below, which is the source of all blessings. That's what Alter Rebbe says. It says, nonetheless, this flow of Chachma, to the letters of speech is a great descent. To accomplish this, it is necessary to arouse the supernal chesed, the supernal kindness, which like water is drawn down from a high place to a low place. Water, when you draw down, it's the same water, the same quality of water that comes from the higher place to the lower place. And how is it done? Is by arousal, by means of arousal from below. Through the acts of charity and kindness here below. Whereby the one diffuses life and kindness to revive the spirit of the humble and downcast. When you bring the kindness, tzedakah, to people that don't have, to help them, that in turn draws down the arousal from above to bring down this blessing to us. This is the meaning of the verse that it says in Jeremiah. It says, Ali salel chacham b'chachmasa yichulu. It says, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, but in such manner that it brings about the fulfillment of the phrase. But it says, but in this, let him glory, in understanding and knowing me. Understanding and knowing me. What does it mean, understanding and knowing me? Ani Hashem oiseh chesed. Ani Hashem oiseh chesed, because I am God who acts with kindness. And this is where you can glory. Because the kindness takes this life of chachma and draws it down below. Ve'im lav, in the absence of this kindly conduct, it is only called his wisdom alone. It remains in heaven as an untapped resource in which the wise man cannot glory. And there is no downward flow of life from it, God forbid. This is why, he says the Alter Rebbe, you need to have, along with the Torah, you need to have the kindness, the chachma, kindness in sharing the Torah with others, kindness in literally giving tzedakah, being kind to those who don't have. There's a story. There was once Reb Zusha of Anipoli, was a big Talmud of the Mezritcher Maggid, and it was a very righteous, holy man, lived in his town, very poor. And there was a Jew in his town. He sees the tzaddik. He decided, we'll give him some tzedakah. Gives him, slips in some tzedakah, gives him in a hidden way. And sure enough, that day he had an amazing day in his business. He figured that it was the blessing of giving tzedakah to the tzaddik that he was blessed. So he started doing it on a regular basis. He always gives tzedakah to this tzaddik, and he was very successful. One day he came and he wanted to give tzedakah to the tzaddik. They told him he's not there. He couldn't find him. So he asked where he was. So they told him he went to his rabbi. He said, what? Rabbi Zusha, he has a rabbi? So if he's such a tzaddik, obviously his rabbi is a much greater tzaddik. So he decided to go visit his rabbi. And he started giving tzedakah. Instead of giving to Reb Zusha, he decided to give to the greater tzaddik, to his rabbi, who was the Maggid of Mezrich. But ever since then, the business started going down. And he was surprised, he didn't understand. I gave tzedakah to Reb Zusha, business was good. I gave tzedakah to Reb Zusha's rabbi, business started going down. So he came to Mezrich and he told the Maggid the whole story. So the Maggid told him, I'll explain you what happened. When you gave tzedakah to Reb Zusha, you didn't make any calculations. You just gave tzedakah. You see a person needed tzedakah, and you gave him. Yes, he's a tzaddik, whatever. But then when you started making calculations and said, oh, maybe I should give to somebody who deserves it more, somebody's a bigger tzaddik, then from Shamayim, they also started making calculations. Should we give you the business? Maybe we should give it to somebody else who deserves it more than you. So this story illustrates that this is when you give tzedakah, and you give it without calculations. Then you have from above the same thing. It draws a similar reaction from above, that Hashem shares the kindness and gives the blachas ad b'lidai without any limitations. So this is the end of today's share. Thank you so much for joining. Ezrat Hashem will continue tomorrow. Make sure to share this, subscribe, and share it with friends. All the best. We'll see you tomorrow morning, Ezrat Hashem. Any questions?